All right, welcome back for another discussion, guys. Today we're talking more about scientific principles and how they apply to what we do in exercise physiology and research and all that good stuff. So the first question here is we're talking about identifying more specific kind of scientific principles that relate to what we do in exercise science that aren't necessarily field specific. So I had a good list here. The first three that I wanted to include were Newton's laws of motion. So that would be the law of inertia, in that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, an object at rest tends to stay at rest until it is acted on by an outside force. Second law, force equals mass times acceleration. And the third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So these are three classics, and I think this is a really good example of scientific principles that apply directly to training, because all of these almost completely govern how we train and how we prescribe weights and resistance exercises, and things like that. So like the law of inertia, for example, things wanting to stay at rest until acted on by an outside force. That could be somebody lifting a weight in the gym. That could be somebody moving a heavy object that is not moving. All of this stuff we now consider to be exercise, but it's all governed, all of it, all exercise, by the kind of these three fundamental principles. So these are the first three I wanted to include. Another one I thought was cool was the first law of thermodynamics, which basically states that energy cannot be destroyed, it just can be transformed. So let's say, for example, you're taking a client in the gym and you want somebody to do a box jump. And they jump up from the box, and then they jump down, and they jump up, and then they jump down. And then they complain the next day that like their feet really hurt, their knees are achy. One thing we didn't consider is that every time that person hits the box or hits the ground, there was a reactive force that hits them back, right? So the first law of thermodynamics, then, understanding that that energy doesn't just dissipate when I hit the box or hit the ground, I can prescribe better things for people who maybe are not as inclined to handle a lot of force right now. If I have a detrained client, for example, I can give them something to accustom their system to absorbing shock before we start jumping on and off of boxes. Does that make sense? Another one that I thought was really big, and this is kind of anatomy and physiology, chemistry, bio, all smushed together here. A big scientific principle that governs exercise is aerobic and anaerobic energy metabolism, and how our body metabolizes carbohydrates and creates ATP. And intimate knowledge of these systems are basically what we use to define cardiovascular training for people. So again, this is a scientific principle that is very broad and is multidisciplinarian from field to field. There's bio there, there's chemistry there, there's anatomy there. But this is a scientific principle that almost completely governs how we think about training. Now, why do we hear more about evidence-based training than principles-based training? Well, if you have been on Instagram or TikTok or any of the major social medias where fitness influencers exist, evidence-based is a buzzword now. It's a cool way of conveying that you have some sort of new knowledge or novel idea that people can implement and then possibly change their outcomes, right? Evidence-based has this feel of science to it, no matter how good the evidence is or how valid the studies are that it came from. Saying that something is evidence-based immediately gives it credence in people's mind who don't really think about things like principles-based training. The reason people don't think about principle-based training is because I think because it's very, very boring. So I would consider myself to be a principles-based coach. I have a litany of things that I believe about exercise, and I will stand by them and program them, and I am based in my principles. Now, what that means sometimes is that clients come in, and I maybe have 3 clients who want similar things, and their workouts look very similar. I may keep clients doing the same exact workouts for 3 and 4 weeks at a time. And while that's not novel or fun or exciting, training shouldn't always be fun, novel, and exciting. A lot of training is repetition and learning and allowing your brain time and space to grow along with your body, right? So when you stick to things like principles and you don't have very much variance in your program, you don't bring a lot of novelty sometimes, I think people think it's a little bit boring. I've been accused of writing boring programs, and I admit to it. The way that I train myself is boring. But I think that's because I have these principles that I believe in, and I know that consistently over time they work. And that informs a lot of my program design. I would love to know how you guys feel about this. Do you feel like you're more of an evidence-based or principles-based coach? And what does that mean for you? Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.